Play something, Beggar. Those 3 words cut through the ballroom like a knife. A white millionaire laughing. A 10-year-old black boy, homeless, standing at the edge of wealth he'd never touch. And a piano, the kind only masters dare approach. What happened in the next 4 minutes didn't just silence a room. It shattered every assumption 200 people had made about who deserves to be heard. This is the story of Liam Davis, a child with nowhere to sleep, a piece of music only 3 people alive can play, and the night his small hands proved that excellence doesn't need permission, it just needs a chance. If you're listening to this, please subscribe and let me know where you're tuning in from, because what you're about to hear went viral for all the right reasons. But to understand how a homeless boy mastered the impossible, we need to go back to the woman who taught him, his mother. Liam Davis was 10 years old the night his life changed. For 6 months, he'd been homeless in New York City. Not because he'd run away, not because there was no one who cared, but because the system, the foster care system, had let him slip through. His home was a covered doorway 2 blocks from the Sterling Hotel on the Upper East Side. His blanket was whatever cardboard he could find. His meals came from whatever food trucks threw away at the end of the day. But Liam had something most homeless kids didn't have. He had his mother's music book. Diane Davis, that was her name. She'd been a black woman in a world that barely made space for her. A classical pianist who graduated from Manhattan School of Music in 2003. One of 3 black students in her entire graduating class. The photo Liam carried showed her in her graduation gown. One black face in a sea of white. Young, determined, proud, but also alone. She'd written something on the back of that photo, in handwriting that had faded but never disappeared. For Liam, you belong everywhere I couldn't go. She'd trained him from the time he was 3 years old until she died when he was 7. Breast cancer, the kind you survive if you can afford the treatment. She couldn't. For 4 years, Diane had poured everything she knew into her son. Every morning before school, every evening after dinner, her hands guiding his on the keys, teaching him not just how to play, but why it mattered. When they see your skin before they hear your music, she'd tell him, you play twice as perfect. After she died, Liam went to live with his grandmother, Clara Davis. Clara worked double shifts cleaning office buildings to keep them afloat. She died 6 months ago. Heart attack. No warning. Liam was supposed to go into foster care. The paperwork got filed, then lost, then filed again. In the chaos, a 10-year-old boy became invisible. He made a choice. He'd stay near his school, PS 124, near his neighborhood, near the only home he'd known. He'd keep going to school, keep his uniform clean in public bathrooms, keep pretending he lived with a friend. No one knew. Not his teachers, not his classmates. No one. But every night, Liam would make his way to the Sterling Hotel, not to beg, not to panhandle, but to listen. The Sterling's lobby pianist, a black man named James Reynolds, 62 years old, played classical repertoire every evening at 7. And there was a heating vent on the side of the building by the service entrance, where if you pressed your ear close enough, you could hear every note. That vent became Liam's conservatory. For 6 months, he'd memorized pieces through that wall. Chopin, Mozart, Beethoven, Rachmaninoff. James Reynolds played them all, and Liam absorbed them like oxygen. His mother's music book was falling apart, pages held together with tape. Her handwriting in the margins, fingering suggestions, breathing notes, tempo markings, and one phrase she'd written over and over, "We belong here too." November 14th, his mother's birthday. That morning, Liam had woken up in his doorway and made a decision. Tonight, the Sterling was hosting its annual charity gala. He'd heard the orchestra rehearsing all week. They'd be playing in the grand ballroom, on the hotel's prized Steinway concert grand, the same kind of piano his mother had played at her graduation recital. He didn't have a plan, he just knew, tonight, on her birthday, he needed to see that piano. Even if it was dangerous, even if he had no right to be there. The photo in his backpack had one more thing written on it, something his mother had added the day before she died. "Play for me, baby, let them hear us." Tonight, Liam would try. What he didn't know, what he couldn't possibly know, was that Richard Whitmore would be there. And Richard Whitmore was having a very bad day. The Sterling Hotel's annual gala was the kind of event where champagne cost more than Liam's entire weekly food budget. $2,500 per plate, 200 guests, designer gowns that rustled like money. The parking lot filled with cars Liam had only seen in movies, and security. Lots of security. 3 guards tonight instead of the usual one, all white, all scanning the crowd like they were protecting Fort Knox instead of a hotel ballroom. Liam watched from his usual spot across the street. He'd learned to read people over the last 6 months, learned to spot the ones who saw him as a threat versus the ones who just saw through him. Tonight, everyone was on edge. He waited until the catering trucks arrived. That was his window. The service entrance would be chaos. Busboys rushing, kitchen staff shouting in Spanish, everyone too busy to notice one small, quiet child slipping through. At 6:47 p.m., he made his move. The kitchen was exactly what he expected. Industrial chaos, steam and shouting and the clatter of dishes, immigrant workers moving too fast to look twice at a black kid in the corner. But someone did look. Maria Gonzalez, 28, a server who'd worked at the Sterling for 3 years. She'd seen Liam before outside sitting by that vent. She'd wondered about him, never said anything, never reported him. Now, their eyes met. For a moment, neither moved. She could call security. 1 word and he'd be dragged out, maybe worse. The police had stopped him 3 times in the last 6 months for looking suspicious. He knew how that went. Maria's face shifted. She saw something in his eyes. Not mischief, not theft, longing. She walked over, knelt down to his level. "Mijo," she whispered, her accent soft, maternal. "You can't be here. They'll call the police." "I just want to see the piano," Liam said. His voice was small but clear. "Just for a minute, please." Maria's hand went to her cross necklace. She thought about her own son back in Honduras, about what it meant to want something beautiful in a world that told you it wasn't yours. "1 minute," she said. "Por favor. Then you leave." Liam nodded. "I promise." He moved through the corridor like a ghost. He knew where the cameras were, knew the blind spots. 6 months on the street taught you things. The ballroom doors were massive, mahogany, gold handles. Through the crack, he could hear the orchestra tuning, strings crying, brass warming, the most beautiful sound he'd heard since his mother died. He pushed the door open just enough to slip through, and froze. The ballroom was bigger than he'd imagined. Crystal chandeliers, tables set with more silverware than he knew what to do with. And in the center, on a raised platform, the Steinway Model D white keys. Black keys, gleaming under the lights. Liam's breath caught. His mother had played a piano like this. She'd described it to him. The weight of the keys, the resonance, how the sound filled a room like water. He took 3 steps forward. That's when Richard Whitmore saw him. Richard Whitmore, 52 years old, hedge fund CEO, net worth somewhere north of $400 million, and tonight, barely holding it together. His daughter, Emma, had failed her youth piano competition that morning, lost to a 12-year-old black girl from Brooklyn. Emma had practiced 6 hours a day for months, hadn't mattered. The judge's words were still echoing in Richard's head. The other performer showed more technical precision and emotional depth. More technical precision. From a black kid from Brooklyn. Richard had spent the day drinking, not enough to be drunk, just enough to be angry. And now, standing in his ballroom, was another black child, homeless by the looks of it, dirty jacket, worn sneakers, backpack held together with duct tape, exactly the kind of kid who shouldn't be here. Richard's face twisted. He started walking toward Liam, his expensive shoes clicking on marble. "Hey!" his voice carried across the room. "Boy, you lost?" The word boy hung in the air, heavy, loaded with history. Liam turned, his stomach dropped, and every eye in the ballroom turned to watch. Officer Blake, the security guard, appeared at Richard's side within seconds. White, 30-ish, hand already moving toward his radio. "How did he get in here?" Richard's emphasis on he wasn't subtle. "I thought we had protocols." Liam's hands were shaking. He'd been here before, not this exact situation, but close enough. The assumption of guilt, the circling of adult bodies, the feeling of being prey. "I'm sorry, sir," Liam said, his voice carefully respectful, the tone his mother had taught him to use. "I just wanted to see the piano." Richard laughed. Not a warm sound, a performance. He wanted an audience. and he was getting one. Nearby tables had gone quiet, heads turning, whispers spreading like fire. Is that a homeless child? How did he get past security? Where are his parents? Richard moved closer. Liam tried to step back, but the crowd had formed a circle, adult bodies in expensive clothes cutting off his exits. See the piano? Richard's smile didn't reach his eyes. This isn't a museum, son. This is a private event. The condescension in son made Liam's jaw tighten. George Wilson, the hotel manager, materialized from somewhere. Mr. Whitmore, perhaps we should— No. Richard waved him off. I'm curious. The kid wants to see the piano. That's when Richard noticed the backpack. Old, patched, the corner of a book visible through the torn zipper. He reached down and pulled it out. No permission, no warning, just grabbed it. Oh! Richard held it up like evidence. We have a little musician. The book was obviously loved and obviously poor. Pages held with tape. Water damage on the cover. In a room full of people who bought new sheet music without checking the price, it looked like garbage. Liam reached for it. Sir, please. That was my mother's. Richard held it higher. Adult height, child height. The physical power imbalance crystal clear. A few guests shifted uncomfortably. One woman, white 50s, diamond earrings, whispered to her husband, someone should stop this. But she didn't move. No one did. At a table near the back, two black couples sat frozen, their faces tight, recognizing what was happening, feeling helpless. One black woman's hand found her husband's, squeezed. They both knew this script. My daughter, Richard announced to the room, practiced 6 hours today. 6 hours. Didn't help her competition. His voice got louder. But sure, let's see what the homeless kid can do. Emma had lost to a black pianist. Richard couldn't say that part out loud, but it was there in his tone, in the way he looked at Liam, in the way he held that book just out of reach. Play something, Richard said. The crowd had gone silent now, watching, waiting. Play something, Beggar, entertain us. The word beggar landed like a slap. Liam's eyes were wet. He blinked hard, trying not to cry, his mother's voice in his head. You play twice as perfect. May I have my mother's book back first, please? Earn it. Richard's smile was cruel. Play something, anything. If you're any good, you can have it back. Liam wiped his eyes with his sleeve, the motion small, vulnerable, 10 years old. He looked at the book in Richard's hand. Pages his mother had touched, notes she'd written, her handwriting. Then he looked at the piano. The Steinway gleamed, waiting. What would you like to hear, sir? The question was perfect, professional, the kind of thing a trained musician asks. It caught Richard off guard for half a second. Surprise me. Richard gestured theatrically. Impress us. Show me what a kid like you can do. A kid like you. There it was, the assumption, the judgment, the line drawn between us and them. Liam took a breath. Something shifted in his expression. Not anger, something quieter, more dangerous, determination. Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 3, he said, his voice steady now, clear, third movement. The crowd murmured, confused. Most of them didn't know what that meant, but at the back of the room, James Reynolds, the hotel's black pianist, went very, very still, his face pale. Because James Reynolds knew exactly what Liam had just named. One of the most difficult pieces in the entire classical piano repertoire. A piece that destroyed professional pianists. A piece Rachmaninoff himself said few could master. A piece no 10-year-old should even attempt. Richard laughed, loud, performative. You can't even pronounce it properly, kid. But something in Richard's laugh was forced, because he'd heard the whispers behind him. Guests who did know what Rachmaninoff's third meant. Guests whose faces had gone from amused to uncertain. That's, someone whispered. That's impossible. He's 10, another voice said. He can't. Liam was already walking toward the piano, his footsteps small on the marble, his worn sneakers soundless compared to the expensive heels that had parted to let him through. He reached the bench, and for the first time in 6 months, Liam Davis was about to touch a piano. Officer Blake moved to stop him, but George Wilson, the hotel manager, held up a hand. Something in his face had changed, guilt maybe, or curiosity. Let him try, George said quietly. Richard's colleagues, men in $1,000 suits, exchanged glances. This was entertaining. A homeless kid about to embarrass himself. They'd talk about this for months. Todd Harrison, Richard's business partner, leaned in. "This'll be over in 10 seconds. But James Reynolds, standing at the back near the kitchen entrance, had both hands pressed to his mouth, because James Reynolds had heard a 10-year-old name a piece that most concert pianists never attempted. And James Reynolds had spent 6 months listening to someone breathe outside the heating vent during his evening performances. Someone who'd been memorizing, learning, absorbing. "Oh my God," James whispered to no one. He couldn't have." At the piano, Liam climbed onto the bench. His feet didn't touch the floor. Hotel staff rushed forward with pedal extenders, suddenly solicitous, guilty. The room watched, some pitying, some curious, most expecting failure. Richard crossed his arms, still holding Diane Davis's music book, and Liam, small, black, homeless, impossible, placed his hands over the keys. 200 people held their breath. The bench adjustment took 45 seconds. 45 seconds where Liam sat, hands in his lap, while grown men fumbled with pedal extenders, where the crowd watched and whispered, where Richard Whitmore smirked at his colleagues, where James Reynolds stood frozen at the back, barely breathing. Finally, the staff stepped back. The pedals were set. The bench was adjusted. Liam's hands hovered over the keys, not touching, just hovering, completely still. For anyone listening who doesn't know, Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 3, they call it Rach 3, is a monster. Sergei Rachmaninoff himself had hands that could span 12 keys. He wrote the piece for his own hands, his own impossible reach. Professional pianists train for years before attempting it. Many never do. It requires extraordinary handspan, stamina, perfect memorization, technical precision most people will never achieve. For a 10-year-old with small hands, it should be physically impossible. But here's what most people in that ballroom didn't know. Classical music has spent centuries telling black people they don't belong, that they have rhythm but not technical precision, that their hands aren't meant for these keys. Diane Davis had fought that her entire life, had graduated from Manhattan School of Music as one of 3 black students in her class, had played her graduation recital on a piano just like this one, and she'd taught her son from the time he was 3 years old, 4 years of training, 7 years of muscle memory surviving without a piano. Liam closed his eyes. He saw his mother's face, her hands guiding his, her voice, "Let them hear us." He took one breath and played the first note. Crystalline, perfect attack. The kind of precision that makes even tuning forks jealous. The opening theme started delicate, deceptive in its simplicity. But the spacing, the decay, the way each note hung in the air, mathematically perfect. Then the cascade began. His hands, small, impossible, too young, started moving with speed that didn't seem human. The technique was conservatory level, mature, professional. Hotel staff who'd been walking away stopped mid-step. Richard's smirk began to fade. James Reynolds' hands dropped from his mouth. His eyes went wide. "Wait," Richard said to Todd Harrison. "He's actually—" The piece built. Octave runs that should have been impossible for hands that size, chromatic passages that blurred together, bass notes rumbling, felt in chests across the room. Liam's body was absolutely still. Only his hands moved, evidence of years of training, of a mother who'd taught him not just how to play, but how to breathe with the music. The famous passage at measure 89 approached, the place where even professional pianists stumble, where hands that can't span the intervals have to cheat, have to approximate, have to sacrifice precision for possibility. Liam's hands flew, and executed it perfectly, not approximately. Not good enough for a child. Perfect. A white woman in the front row gasped audibly. He's not struggling. He's making it look easy. The room's acoustics, designed for concerts, engineered for perfection, carried every nuance, every subtle touch, every dynamic shift from whisper soft to wall-shaking forte. There was nowhere for technical flaws to hide. There weren't any. Orchestra musicians who'd been setting up for later stopped, put down their instruments, watched. One violinist leaned to another. "That's not possible. He's 10. That piece destroys adults." The music continued, relentless, building, technically perfect but also emotional, not just notes, not just precision, art, soul. A black man in the audience, mid-40s, successful, someone who'd fought for every inch of his own success, felt tears starting. Because he recognized what he was watching. Someone like him, someone black, someone they'd tried to exclude. Owning the space. James Reynolds whispered to the person next to him. That's the Horowitz interpretation from 1968. Vladimir Horowitz, one of the greatest pianists who ever lived. His 1968 recording of Rachmaninoff's Third was legendary, and Liam was playing it note for note, which meant he'd learned it by ear, from recordings, memorized it through 6 months of listening through a heating vent while homeless. Perfect pitch, photographic musical memory, the kind of talent that appears once in a generation, if you're lucky. The silence in the room deepened, no coughs, no shifting, barely any breathing. People weren't just listening anymore. They were confronting every assumption they'd made about the small black child in the worn jacket, the kid who didn't belong, the beggar. Richard's face had gone pale. His colleagues had stopped smiling. The room's energy had shifted from amusement to shock to something approaching awe. "How is this possible?" someone whispered. "Who is he?" Liam's feet worked the pedal extenders. Perfect timing, professional control, the kind of detail that takes years to master. His breathing synced with the musical phrases, athletic, controlled, a trained performer's breath, and still the music built, climbing, reaching, toward the coda. The final 90 seconds, the most demanding passage in the entire piece, the place where Rachmaninoff separated the gifted from the divine. Liam's hands moved faster, the impossible intervals, the thundering bass, the cascading treble, his small body absolutely still except for his hands and the subtle lean into the difficult passages. Maria Gonzalez, watching from the kitchen entrance, had both hands over her mouth, tears streaming. The two black couples in the audience were gripping each other's hands, witnessing. Dr. Patricia Williams, a black woman, Juilliard faculty who'd come to this gala out of obligation, stood up from her chair. Her program fell to the floor unnoticed because she recognized the interpretation. She'd heard it before. At Manhattan School of Music in 2003, played by a black woman named Diane Davis at her graduation recital. "Oh my God," Patricia whispered. "Diane, that's Diane's interpretation." The final measures approached, the cadenza that Horowitz made famous, the passage that required hand-spanning intervals a 10-year-old shouldn't reach. Liam used arpeggiation, pedal timing, finger repositioning, professional solutions taught by his mother to compensate for small hands, and made it sound effortless. The final chord crashed, octaves in both hands, bass rumbling through the floor, treble singing through the chandeliers. Liam's hands lifted from the keys, the final chord sustained by the pedal, slowly decaying, fading into silence, complete, devastating, eternal. 4 full seconds of absolute silence. No breath, no movement. Time suspended between worlds, and in that silence, 200 people confronted what they'd assumed about a black child with nowhere to sleep. The silence stretched. 1 second, 2, 3. Liam sat on the bench, small hands in his lap, tears streaming down his face. Not tears of sadness, transformation. He'd just played his mother's piece, on her birthday, in front of everyone. He'd let them hear her. 4 seconds. Then from the back of the room, a single sound broke the spell. Clapping, 2 hands, alone, distinct. James Reynolds, the Black Hotel pianist. Tears streaming down his face, applauding, and the dam broke. The entire ballroom erupted. Not polite applause, not charity gala clapping, explosion, 200 people on their feet, some crying, some shouting, all applauding so hard their hands hurt. The 2 black couples in the audience were first to stand, first to recognize what had just happened, applauding with their whole bodies, celebrating, witnessing, crying, because they understood in a way the white guests were only beginning to grasp. One of theirs had just claimed this space. Orchestra musicians joined the ovation, professional recognition, instruments forgotten, just standing, clapping, some with tears running down their faces. A cellist turned to the conductor. "I've been playing for 30 years. I've never seen—" She couldn't finish the sentence. Maria Gonzalez was sobbing openly in the kitchen doorway. She'd given him 1 minute. 1 minute had changed everything. White guests were crying too, but their tears were different, uncomfortable, ashamed. One woman clutched her husband's arm. We let them, oh God!" Richard Whitmore stood frozen, his face drained of color, the music book still in his hand, suddenly heavy. His colleagues were already moving away from him. Subtle, physical distancing. CYA responses. Todd Harrison, his business partner, leaned in just long enough to whisper, "We're done here, Richard. We'll talk Monday." Then Todd joined the standing ovation, leaving Richard alone. At the piano, Liam tried to stand, but his legs were shaking. A hotel staff member rushed forward with a steadying hand. Gentle now, protective. "Who are you?" someone shouted from the crowd. "Who trained you?" Liam's voice came out small, overwhelmed. "My mother, Diane Davis, Manhattan School of Music, 2003. And Dr. Patricia Williams, who'd been standing, who'd been crying, pushed through the crowd. "Diane Davis?" Her voice broke. "I knew Diane. I was in her graduating class." The room went quiet again. A different quiet. Reverent. Patricia reached the piano, knelt down to Liam's eye level. Black woman, black child, connection across grief. "Baby," she said, and her voice code-switched into warmth his mother would have used. "I'm Dr. Pat. Your mama, she was brilliant." "And stubborn. And she loved you more than music." Liam's face crumpled. "You knew her?" "I knew her, baby. And she talked about you all the time. You're everything she said." Someone else was pushing through the crowd now. Thomas Miller, 42, in a suit that said, "Not wealthy, but doing okay." Social worker with Child Protective Services. He'd come to this gala because his boss made him. Now he was moving with purpose. "Liam," Thomas said gently, kneeling beside Patricia. "I'm Thomas Miller, Child Protective Services. Where have you been staying, son?" The room went very still. Everyone heard the question. Liam's voice was barely audible. "I don't have anywhere. My grandma died 6 months ago." Collective gasp. Horror. Shame. Guilt. George Wilson, hotel manager, was already on his phone. "Suite 412, empty. Get it ready now." He turned to Liam. "You have a home tonight, as long as you need." James Reynolds reached the piano, his face wet. "Son, I saw you, outside." "For months, I should have—" His voice broke. "I'm black too. I should have known. I'm so sorry." But Richard was trying to leave, trying to slip toward the exit while everyone's attention was on Liam. A black man from the audience stepped in front of him. 40s, successful, angry. "Mr. Whitmore, I don't think you're leaving just yet." A black woman joined him. Angela Brown, 40, attorney. She'd been recording on her phone from the moment Richard grabbed the book. "That's assault of a minor," Angela said calmly. "Racial harassment, all on video, about to be very public." Richard's face twisted. "I didn't mean it wasn't—" "Don't." Dr. Patricia Williams stood up from Liam, turned to face Richard. "Your apology means nothing, but your checkbook does." The room was watching now, all of them, witnesses. Richard's hand shook as he pulled out his checkbook. Wrote a check, $50,000. It wasn't enough, could never be enough, but it was a start. Todd Harrison, Richard's colleague, spoke up for everyone to hear. "Richard, we'll need your resignation Monday. The board won't tolerate this." Someone's phone buzzed, then another, and another. "It's trending," a young woman said. "The video. Racist CEO humiliates black child prodigy. 12 million views already." Richard's career was ending in real time, but no one was looking at him anymore. Thomas Miller was already making calls. "I need emergency foster care placement tonight. Musical family if possible. The child is gifted. Yes, tonight." Professor Stephen Anderson, Juilliard faculty, had come with Patricia, stepped forward. "Pre-college program, full scholarship, housing, whatever he needs." The black couples from the audience approached, offering support, resources, community. "Son," one of the men said, "we're going to make sure you're taken care of. That's a promise." Liam, overwhelmed, exhausted, looked around at all the faces, all the adults suddenly mobilizing to help. Then he looked at Richard, still standing there, still holding his mother's book. "Sir?" Liam's voice was quiet. "Can I have my mama's book back?" Richard's hand trembled. He couldn't meet Liam's eyes, just held out the book. Liam took it, clutched it to his chest. Pages his mother had touched. And then he said something that made the entire room go still. "Thank you for making me play, sir. My mama would have wanted people to hear her interpretation." Grace. From a 10-year-old who'd been humiliated, grabbed, mocked, Grace, The room exhaled collectively. Some sobbed harder. Dr. Patricia Williams turned to the crowd, and when she spoke, her voice carried. "Y'all see this child's grace? That's black excellence. That's what Diane taught him while she was fighting to survive in spaces that barely let her breathe." She looked at Richard. While we taught her, she had to be twice as good for half the recognition. Patricia knelt back down to Liam. "Baby, tomorrow we talk about Juilliard. Tonight, you're safe." Maria Gonzalez brought water. A warm blanket, wrapped it around Liam's small shoulders. "Está bien, mijo," she whispered. "Estás a salvo." "You're safe." James Reynolds put his hand on Liam's shoulder. "Your mama. She was one of the finest pianists I ever heard. And son, you just proved she lives on." Richard stood alone now. His colleagues had moved away. The crowd had turned their backs. Officer Blake, the security guard who'd been ready to drag Liam out, stood at attention now, protective, ashamed. Someone handed Liam his backpack. Inside, his mother's photo, worn, loved. He pulled it out, looked at her face. "You belong everywhere I couldn't go." "I did it, Mama," he whispered. "They heard you." The applause started again, softer this time, sustained. People weren't ready to let the moment end, because they'd witnessed something that would change them. A black child with nowhere to sleep had played music most adults would never master, had done it with grace, had done it with his mother's love carrying every note. "Excellence has no color," someone said. Dr. Patricia Williams looked at them. "No, but racism does, and it just got schooled by a 10-year-old. The room erupted again. Thomas Miller made 3 phone calls in 5 minutes. The first was to his supervisor, emergency placement, tonight, no exceptions. The second was to a family he knew, Lisa and Brandon Johnson, both black, both musicians, both foster care certified. The third was to the police, not for Liam, for documentation. Richard Whitmore had grabbed a child, had humiliated him, had created a hostile environment. There would be reports filed. Meanwhile, Dr. Patricia Williams stayed kneeling beside Liam. She wasn't leaving this child's side until he was secure. "Baby, listen to me," she said softly. "Tomorrow morning, you and I are going to Juilliard. We're getting you tested, getting you enrolled, full scholarship, you hear me?" Liam nodded, overwhelmed. Professor Anderson joined them. "The pre-college program has housing. You'll live on campus with other students. You'll have teachers, resources, everything your mother wanted for you." George Wilson, hotel manager, returned from wherever he'd gone. "Suite 412 is ready. Tonight, tomorrow, as long as you need. No charge, no questions." James Reynolds pulled up a chair, sat at Liam's level. "Son, I owe you an apology. I saw you outside. For months. I knew something wasn't right. I should have asked. I should have helped." "You played every night," Liam said quietly. "I learned from you, through the vent." James's face crumpled. "Through the—" He couldn't finish, just pulled Liam into a careful hug. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Maria Gonzalez brought food, a plate from the gala buffet. Real food, hot food. More food than Liam had seen in weeks. "Come, mijo, eat." The black couples approached, introduced themselves, offered phone numbers, support, community. "We're going to make sure you never sleep on the street again," one of the women said. "That's a promise." Angela Brown, the attorney, was already working, making calls, building a case. "The video's gone viral," she told Patricia. 18 million views now. Every major news outlet is calling, but I'm making sure they tell the story right, about Diane, about systemic failures, about what Liam achieved despite everything. Across the room, Richard Whitmore was still there, trapped by social obligation, by witnesses, by his own actions. Todd Harrison, his business partner, returned, not to comfort, to deliver news. "Board met by emergency conference call," Todd said coldly. "You're suspended immediately. Full investigation. Prepare your resignation." Richard tried to speak, couldn't. "What you did tonight," Todd continued, "that's not just bad optics, that's who you are. And we're done pretending otherwise." Another colleague approached, Janet Morrison, board member. "Your accounts are frozen pending review. We're examining every diversity claim, every hiring decision, every complaint that's been filed over the last 10 years. Richard's empire was crumbling in real time, but no one cared. All attention was on Liam. Thomas Miller hung up his last call. Lisa and Brandon Johnson are on their way. They're bringing their adoption paperwork. If everything checks out, Liam, you could have a permanent family by summer. They play music? Liam asked. Lisa plays cello. Brandon plays violin. They teach at a community music center in Brooklyn. They've been foster parents for 5 years. They're perfect. Dr. Patricia Williams pulled out her phone, showed Liam a photo, her and a younger woman, both in graduation gowns. That's me and your mama at MSM 2003. She was my friend, Liam, my sister, and I'm going to make sure you have everything she wanted for you. Liam stared at the photo, his mother, younger, smiling. Not alone in the photo, she'd had Patricia. Did she talk about me? He asked quietly. Baby, she never stopped talking about you. Patricia's voice broke. You were her everything, her proof that black children belong in classical music, that we belong everywhere. The hotel staff had cleaned up the music book, carefully, reverently, returned it to Liam with new protective covering. We can preserve this, one of them said, if you'd like, archive quality, so it lasts. Liam clutched it. Thank you. George Wilson returned again, this time with keys. Suite 412, top floor, best view in the hotel. It's yours. James Reynolds stood. I'm playing tomorrow night, 7 p.m. If you'd like to join me, actually play, not listen through a vent, I'd be honored. Liam's face lit up. First real smile of the night. I'd like that. The crowd was starting to disperse, but people kept approaching, offering help, money, resources, opportunities. A concert pianist offered to mentor, a music store owner offered a piano, an instrument maker offered maintenance for life. The viral video was doing exactly what Angela Brown hoped. Not just exposing Richard, but spotlighting the systemic failures that let a gifted child sleep on the street for 6 months. By morning, 3 music programs would offer scholarships, 5 families would offer fostering, 2 congresspeople would cite Liam's case in speeches about child welfare reform. But right now, Liam was just exhausted. Thomas Miller checked his watch. Lisa and Brandon will be here in 20 minutes. How about we get you to that suite? You can clean up, rest. Dr. Patricia Williams stood. I'm staying with him until his foster family arrives. Me too, said James Reynolds. And me, said Maria Gonzalez. Us too, said the black couples. A community was forming, right there, in real time, protecting one of their own. Liam stood, legs still shaky, the blanket around his shoulders. As they walked toward the elevator, he turned back one last time. The Steinway gleamed under the lights. Tomorrow, he'd play it again, on purpose this time, invited. But tonight, he'd done what his mother asked. They heard us, Mama, he whispered. And somewhere, Diane Davis smiled. 6 months later. Liam Davis woke up in his bedroom, with a door that locked from the inside, with a window that looked out over Brooklyn, with an upright piano in the corner. His mother's photo sat on the piano, in a frame now, professional, protected. The music book, archived, preserved, sat beside it. He took it out on Sundays, played through her annotations, heard her voice in the margins. The adoption papers had been finalized in March. Lisa and Brandon Johnson were officially his parents now. Mama Lisa, as he called her, played cello. Papa Brandon played violin. Their apartment was small but filled with music. Morning practice sessions. Evening rehearsals. The kind of home where sheet music covered the coffee table and rosin dust sparkled in the sunlight. Liam, Mama Lisa called from downstairs. Breakfast in 15, baby. Finish your phrase first. He was working on a composition, a piece he'd started writing in February. Called it For Mama. Not practicing someone else's music, creating his own. His therapist, Dr. James Morrison, a black man who specialized in gifted youth, said that was good, healthy, a sign he was processing his grief and trauma in productive ways. They met twice a week, talked about homelessness, about loss, about racial trauma, about survivor's guilt, about all the things a 10-year-old shouldn't have to carry but did anyway. Slowly, Liam was learning to put some of it down. At Juilliard Pre-College, he was thriving. Dr. Patricia Williams mentored him personally, not just in music, but in life. She talked about his mother, told him stories, kept Diane's memory alive. The viral video had done something unexpected. It raised $2.3 million, not for Liam, though plenty of people offered, for a fund, the Diane Davis Fund, scholarships for black and brown youth in classical music, covering instrument access, audition fees, summer programs, cultural mentorship, everything his mother had fought for, everything she'd needed and never gotten. The fund had already helped 43 kids in 6 months. Liam performed 5 times. Each concert sold out. Each one benefited homeless youth programs or music education. He didn't keep a penny. Mama Lisa and Papa Brandon made sure of that. "You play because you love it," Papa Brandon had said. "Not because you need to survive. Not anymore." Richard Whitmore had resigned, divorced, lost custody of Emma. The hedge fund fired him. The board investigated and found a pattern of discrimination spanning 15 years, but Richard was in therapy now. Intensive anti-racism training, volunteering at a homeless shelter, funding music programs with what money he had left, not redemption, accountability. Emma had reached out to Liam. They were pen pals now. She was learning about her privilege, about what her father had done, about how to be different. She'd quit piano competitions, started teaching music to elementary school kids in the Bronx instead. The Sterling Hotel had changed too, year-round artist-in-residence program for homeless musicians. James Reynolds ran it, teaching, mentoring, giving back. Maria Gonzalez had been promoted, head of community outreach. She coordinated programs between the hotel and underserved youth. Her son had moved from Honduras to live with her. The 2 black couples from that night, the Washingtons and the Harrises, had become part of Liam's extended family. They came to every concert, sent care packages, called on Sundays, community. "Liam!" Mama Lisa called again. "Come on, baby. Papa made pancakes." Liam played the last measure of his composition, let it ring out. He looked at his mother's photo. "I made it, Mama. We made it." That afternoon, Dr. Patricia Williams visited, brought something she'd found in the Manhattan School of Music archives, his mother's graduation program, from 2003, and inside, tucked in the back, a note in Diane's handwriting. "For my future child, play with all your heart. The world needs to hear us. Don't let them make you small. Don't let them make you silent. You belong everywhere. I love you. Mama." Liam read it, cried. Happy tears this time. Patricia hugged him. "Your mama knew. She always knew you'd be brilliant." Next month, Liam's debut album would release, the Diane Davis Interpretations. All proceeds to the Diane Davis Fund, his mother's legacy, her interpretation, her voice. Finally heard. On this album cover, Liam's hands on piano keys, his mother's book open beside him, their story. One night of racism met a lifetime of black excellence. Angela Brown, the attorney, had written in the album's liner notes. Excellence won, and the door opened wider for everyone. Papa Brandon called from the kitchen. "Liam, your pancakes are getting cold." Liam closed his mother's note, placed it carefully with her photo, went downstairs to his family, to breakfast, to music, to home. "They heard you, Mama," he whispered before leaving his room. The piano sat silent, waiting for tomorrow's practice. But if you listened close, really close, you might hear something, an echo, a memory, a mother's love in every note. Diane Davis, finally heard.